How's it going, guys? How are you doing? And welcome to a brand new video tutorial from Nodejs. Today we're going to be talking about a little bit of how you can work with JavaScript ES7 decorators. So decorators are a new way to be able to add functionality and manipulate the standard data objects or data types of JavaScript in an easy way. So it actually easily allows you to manipulate the metadata of your JavaScript objects, either classes or even methods and functions. So you can add metadata into that functions. You can get like the reference of the function and you can manipulate it. You can create a new function depending on the current function, or the best thing you can do is actually you can chain classes and create instances together from that. So if you're familiar with Angular, it uses a lot and it actually depends a lot on decorators. So we actually use decorators for making things possible like dependency injection and chaining methods and all of different things, and having a singleton instance throughout the whole application of class services and stuff like that. So we're going to be learning in this on how you can use this for JavaScript and ES7. So I've got a project in here. It's a pretty simple project. For that, we've got it. Let me just open up this. So basic projects in here actually runs Webpack with Babel, and Babel in here we've got to use a specific plugins to be able to use the new feature of decorators, because they are still in the stage 2 of the ECMAScript proposal standards. So you've got to just go ahead and use Babel as a plugin in order to be able to do that. So make sure to go ahead and install the Babel plugin proposal decorators, and set the legacy to true inside of the Babel RC. If you're not familiar with how you can set up Babel, make sure to go and check out how you can do really that. And on the other hand, there's actually a Babel preset environment. So the preset environment in this case actually also to work with decorators, and it has like the new version, or pretty much also to work with ES6 and ES7, more specifically ES7, because decorators are available on the JavaScript or ECMAScript ES or pretty much 2016 version. Alright, so this is what probably you need to go for the configuration. Just config.json, make sure to set the compiler options and experimental decorators to true, otherwise your code editor, in this case Visual Studio Code, won't work with it, and it's just gonna give you like quite some issues working with decorators. So make sure to set that true, because they're still experimental, so not really recommended to work with it in like production build website or something, because there's still a lot of changes coming up to the decorators though, but you can just go and work with it. The final thing in here we've got is Webpack to work with Babel and just actually compile our code that we've got in here. The entry point is index.js, and we're finally just outputting into the up.js inside of the distribution folder. And as I've said, the entry point is index.js, and we've got everything inside of that. So this is pretty much simply what we're doing, and we're simply running the watch in order to run the watch in here and save everything, compile everything, and bundle it. Then we can just go and layout it into the browser. I've got to use like the live server extension from Visual Studio Code in order to like create a server in here and work with the index.html. For the index.html, simply just layout in the up.js, which the bundle size or the final bundle came up from the Webpack actually, and we can simply just go and work with it without any problems. So this is basically all you need to do for working with that, and then you're going to start working with pretty much decorators and how you can use them in your projects. So before jumping into decorators, there's a really small thing that you need to learn before or know how to manipulate and work with. We need to look on the object property descriptors. So what are property descriptors is pretty much what describes a property inside of a JavaScript standard object. Each property has either a function, or pretty much a normal property inside of a function has its own descriptor, which tells JavaScript how to properly manipulate the object properly. And this is a really important thing to learn about. So as we are JavaScript programmers and developers, we know how to create an object. Like we create an O, and it's going to be a normal object, has an A, like name in here, and has a B, like something like this, an age or something. But we don't really know how you manipulate the basic, or how to go low level and manipulate these properties inside of a normal object, and we don't know how JavaScript treats those and how it actually works with it. So this is where it comes a property descriptor. So each property in this case has its own metadata inside of the object in order to describe the property. So either the property is going to be writable or read only. So this also has in that either enumerable, which pretty much allows it to get lists inside of an array in order to have like a for loop inside of it to work with the property or not. You can also have like configurable, so you can easily configure the descriptor, like you can manipulate or change the descriptor and add and update it as however you want, or it just like read only and you cannot change the description and so on and so forth. So this is pretty much what property descriptors are. In order to work with property descriptors, so let's gonna try to get the property descriptor of A in this case. So the property descriptor of A, we're gonna go ahead and use the object. So I'm gonna be using the centric objects class, and I'm gonna get own property descriptor, or you can get like a descriptors which returns an array. So here you give it the actual object, which is going to be O, and here the string, which means the property name. So we need to provide the property name inside of a string, and it's just going to be returning the descriptor. So a descriptor, and now we can just go and use console.log. So we can say descriptor, a descriptor. Simple as that. We can just go and refresh that, and there we go. We got descriptor, and pretty much as clear as here, it returns an object with configurable or set to true, and that means we can go in and easily manipulate the descriptor of the A property. We can change it and we can manipulate it however we want. We've got the enumerable, which is true, so it can easily get listed on an array whenever we try to get like the keys of the object or something like this. So you can easily enumerate throughout this property. This is the value, which pretty much represent the value of the current property, and writable or not, so you can easily change the value once it's created or not, either read only or not. So this is the actual property says that. Now let's say we want to create another property here, say, and like we're gonna get a new object reference though, but we can just go and like create that using the object.create method. So I'm gonna be creating like objects1 or something, anything like that, and I'm going to use the object. So I'm going to use the object.create. Alright, so the create method in here, where it takes actually the object's prototype. So if you're familiar with prototypes and how they work, like the prototype chain, you've got to first provide the prototype that's going to inherit from, and I'm going to use the base prototype of object.prototype. The second thing it takes in here is actually the project or properties descriptor map, which means the key is going to be the name of the property that's going to be added into the object, and the value of this is going to be the object of the descriptor. So the same values we've put in here, if you just like omit any value or not putting it inside of the object, it's going to just take the default value. So for this, I'm going to just be saying like configurable set to false, which means we cannot change the descriptor whatsoever. We cannot update it. Once it's created, it won't be able to update it. Like writable, so it's going to be also set to false, so you can't actually update it or anything. Enumerable, I'm not just going to set it true in here, and you can set the value to anything. So to anything like that, and that's pretty much how you can create the object. So after saving this, it's going to create a new reference of the object, and you can just go ahead and do console.log. It's going to be a normal object, so you can take a look and check it out how it works. You can also use the object.getOwn, or pretty much you can use the base objects class, so getOwn property descriptor. And this one is going to be pretty much like returning the actual objects, and you can give it the name. So I don't know what I've put in there. So it's going to be A, as we're used to. So there you go. So we save that, and there we go. So we got A is actually set to anything for the actual object, and when we look on the descriptor of the A, the same thing as you have said, like configurable false, enumerable true, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. So this is pretty much how it works. If you want to update like a descriptor, you can use the object.define property, and here you can give it the object reference, like objects1, and the second thing it takes the property name. The third thing it takes actually the property descriptor that you want to set for the pretty much the new property that you've set in here. Of course, you can work with methods or functions inside of like the object without any issues or problems, without any problems. So this is pretty much how project or property descriptors work, and they are very important in order to understand how decorators work, and how property descriptors are super important in this case for decorators. So let's just go and jump into decorators. So simply, decorators are the functions that can manipulate the base metadata of another functions, or it can add data to it, or it can even return another function when it's signed to the current function. So for example, you're going to try to put a class. This class is going to be let's say a user class. So the user class is going to have a constructor. As we all know, there's constructors like on the Es7. There's actually a first name and a last name taken for this, and we can just going to do this dot first name equals first name, and this last name equals last name. Simple as that. It's not really that complicated or anything. So this is pretty simple. We can just go and create a method in here. So get full name from the user, and this is just going to return a concatenated last name and first name. So this we're gonna plus just an empty space and just do first name. So as simple as that. This is how we can do it. You can go create an instance like the user equals new user, and we can pass it in here like Brooks and I don't know, Alex or something, anything like that can do the job. We can go and do console.log. So we can say user, and it's going to be user.get full name. It should pretty much return the full name for us. And there you go. You got user, Brooks, Alex, and it pretty much works pretty much fine. Now, in this case, we can easily hack this method and we can change it and manipulate it however we want. So what we want is to create a decorator that can actually assign into a specific method and make it a read-only. And that's, of course, going to be using the help of descriptors, because descriptors holds the metadata of a property either to set it writable or not. So this way, JavaScript that can know to manipulate, or it can update this specific property inside of the object or not. And remember, classes are normal JavaScript objects after all, because they're just like syntactical sugar. So after all, in the JavaScript, it's going to be treated normally as an object. It has a prototype, it has everything. It only just like a constructor. You can even create your own classes using chained functions with the prototypes, but it's better to work with it this way. So here what we want is to create a decorator. So let's going to try to define our first decorator. It's going to be a read-only decorator. And as I said, decorators are simply a normal functions. So I'm going to do function, and it's going to be like read-only decorators. So I'm just going to do read-only. And for the decorator functions, by default, it takes 3 main arguments. So it's the target. So the target in this case is going to be representing the current target that is running on the current class. Or then we're going to have like the property, so the current property that we are targeting, and the last thing is going to be the descriptor of the current property that's going to be assigned to. So this is going to be the descriptor, and this is going to pretty much be the function. And the function, what we need to do, we can manipulate the descriptor, we can get the data from the target or anything like that. But what you need to do and what you're required to do in order to make this as a valid decorator is you need to return a valid descriptor that's going to be assigned later on for the current property. So here we need to, we can do directly return the current descriptor and there's no changes. What we want is actually to set the current descriptor to writable, and remember there's a writable property inside of every single property belongs to a standard JavaScript object. So we can set this simply to false, and this is going to make it a read only. So this current property, we won't be able to change it, other code cannot be able to change it. So it's just going to throw up an exception whenever you try to manipulate the method or the function and try to temper with it or update it or change the reference. So this is simply all you need to do, just change the descriptor and pretty much returns a new descriptor. Here for working with the decorators, you need to use the @ character, then you assign the name of the function in the descriptor. And if you have any wrapper functions or something, you don't really need to call it with the bracket in here or the parentheses, because it doesn't really need that, because it's just not gonna be executing the function anyway. So you just put it like this way, you just save. And there's no changes actually, but what we're trying to do is actually we can go and throw out the user. So we access the user, we access the prototype, and we try to temper with it. So we can do get the full name is going to equal to a new function. So this is going to be equaling to a function. What it's going to do is just going to go and console log hacked, and we can just going to see that there's no changes whatsoever, because it's just gonna have a read only, so it doesn't change it whatsoever. And we can move this code a little bit above this one in order to see the changes. But there you go, there's no changes, it's still output the same thing, Alex Burks. But if we try to get rid of the read only in here and we save it, so we save it, there we go, we've got hacked, and the user now is actually undefined because there's nothing actually to work with, and we're not printing anything because this is an undefined method. So there you go. So this is pretty much what you have created in here, and you can easily hack functions, but using a decorator that you've just created in a really simple steps. So you can just put a read only, and it's gonna work right straight to the point. So this is what decorators are and what they're used. You can manipulate the descriptor, you can change the value. So for example, you can create another function or another decorator, change value, which pretty much has no point, but this is going to be a wrapper function. It first takes like an argument, and here is going to be new value. And what it does, it returns the actual descriptor function. So there's going to be a normal anonymous function that's going to take the target, the property, and the descriptor. So this function is going to be assigned as our decorator, but it's going to be just a wrapper function, so we can go in and call it and pass in a new value that we want to send the current like full name or the current method to. So in this pretty much case, what we can do, we can just gonna do we're gonna just manipulate the descriptor. We set the value to new value, so remember that, and we can simply just go and do return descriptor. So this is going to be assigned actually to a normal property. So if you want to do this, like you can't work with it in this case, but if you want to just go ahead and make this happen, you can go ahead and do it in a function. It's going to temper the whole function. So we can do change value. We can pass it in here, new value, like nothing. I totally forgot about that. So just passing it this way, and we can just get rid of that because we don't need it anymore. So you see, we cannot actually call it as a function because it's not a function anymore. We temper with it and we change the value to it to a string. You can get rid of this parentheses, and you should actually print out the new value that you've put in here as get full name. So you can clearly see you can do anything with descriptors and decorators pretty much, and you can work with them smoothly. So this is only for property descriptors. There's the other kind of descriptors is actually class descriptors, which are much more efficient and they can work much better. So for class decorators, what you need to do, instead of returning a descriptor on the function of the decorator, you simply return a constructor for the actual class, because the whole class structure is actually just representing a simple constructor. So the whole main part of the class is the constructor itself. So in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a function, and the simple function in here is going to just be a wrapper function. So I'm going to call it is logged in function, and here you can pass in status to it. So this can just simply be a wrapper, as we've done the change value decorator. And in this case, what we're going to do is actually return another function which is going to represent as a decorator. So remember that. So it's going to be our decorator function, so you can imagine it. And for every single class decorator, what it takes is actually the class reference. Like the current class reference is just going to be put it on the arguments of this. So it's going to be class reference. And as I've said before, you need to like return a decorator or pretty much a constructor for working with the classes whenever you try to assign it to a decorator. So here we need to return another function which is going to represent the new constructor for the class. So it's going to be a function, and for this function we can pass in like first name, last name, as we're doing for a normal. So I think I've reversed that anyway. So function, first name and last name, and for this one I can go ahead and access this keyword without any issues. I can say first name equals first name, and this dot last name equals last name. And of course, let's say since this is actually called is logged in function, we want to just go ahead and set a new property which is an is logged in going to be boolean, and either set the current status that you have passed in. So it is going to be this dot is logged in, and this is going to equal actually to status. If the status is undefined for some reason, we can just go ahead and just like by default put into it a false, so the user isn't logged in or whatsoever. So this is basically what it is. This is going to represent or pretty much going to replace the whole constructor. You can even here return a new class, and you can inherit the class from the current class reference, and it could work pretty much fine. So we're going to try to use this. As you clearly see, for class decorators, you need to put it above the class definition. So it's going to be like is logged in, and here we can pass in the status. For example, I'm going to put it true because it has a default by default. And here we can go and do is logged in. So we can go and check on that, and there you go. There's a user true. So the is actually logged in. It's pretty much true in here. You can put logged in order to be able to identify that really quickly. There you go, we got it through. If you're just not passing anything in here, we save it again. It's clear to see that it's undefined because it doesn't work whatsoever. So you need to call the wrapper function in order to return the actual decorator. So if you're not gonna be passing anything, you're just gonna have like false by default, as we have set it in here, and it can work pretty much as charming as it is without any issues or problems. As I've said before, you can easily work with this one. So for example, you can go ahead and return a new class. Since classes are normal constructors functions, this is what it represents. So you can return a new anonymous class that's gonna extend from the actual class reference, and there's gonna be pretty much a normal class that can have a constructor. And there you go, it can pretty much work the same way as it did in here. Without any problems actually. So this is basically all you need to work with. You can have the class reference and everything without an issue. So this is pretty much what descriptors and well, class references and decorators work. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video tutorial. I wanted to point out how you can work with it. I tried to explain a lot of things and examples in order to be able to work with it properly. The best actually way to work with decorators actually throughout class decorators, because proper decorators aren't that much of grades, but they still have some beneficial side, so you might want to go and use it in your projects. Why not? So make sure also to go ahead and check out the status of the decorators, because they will eventually be added to the standard version of ECMAScript, but it's going to take quite some time, and that's been still 2017 or something, so that might still take quite some time too. But thank you guys for watching anyway. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video tutorial. If you have any issues with JavaScript or anything, or new features you want to discuss as video tutorials, I'm going to be very glad to put that. So make sure to put that in the comments below. I'll be very happy to check out all your comments, reply why not, and put that thumbs up in there. And of course, subscribe for new video tutorials and getting all the news from us. You can check out the untitled.com to get new written and video high quality tutorials. So thank you guys for watching. I've said again, see you all hopefully in the next video tutorial.